Well, I've been in full-time ministry now for about 16 years, investing in the lives of men, of young men, and families. And that is a lot of time to see both success and unfortunately some sadness. During that time, Karen was a very special part of our ministry, and so we've been mourning her loss to cancer after she passed into glory on June 22nd. But in the days leading up to her passing, I sought out people that I knew might desire to say goodbye to her, even people we hadn't seen for years. And one of them was Zach, a young man I met at camp when he was 12, and who became a very special part of our life 16 years ago. Karen had such a deep affection for him that she called him her Tuesday son, because for a time he was in our home that regularly. And in the early years of his time with us, there were some amazing moments that were really encouraging. But as he moved into his late teens, his life began to go sideways, and I really haven't seen him or heard from him for about 10 years. That was until this past June, when Zach and his girlfriend and their dog arrived so that he could say his goodbyes. He was sitting there holding her little hands as through tears he began to thank her for the vision that she'd given him of feminine godliness, the way her faith and her faithfulness had shaped him. And then shortly after that, he collected his girlfriend and the dog and they traveled back home. That was it. 2 months later, I knew that he was at the memorial service with his parents, but I never saw him. I wasn't even sure I'd ever see him again. And then the twist. A few weeks ago, my daughter Hannah sent me a screenshot of an Instagram post by Zach's former best friend from high school celebrating Zach's 28th birthday. And my jaw hit the floor. This is what the Instagram post said. Happy 28th birthday to this guy right here. What a journey. If you knew me in high school, you would know that Zach and I were as close as brothers, my best friend. Then off to college, separate ways, different interests, 10 plus years later, forgiveness and rekindled friendship. What brought us back together? A death of a mutual loved one. The funeral of a godly woman, wife to a mentor of ours, and a simple text of God's goodness. God's plan is definitely bigger than our own. What a blessing to have you back in my life. I'm super duper proud of you and your growth in knowing God's goodness. What in the world happened from his short visit at Karen's bedside to the penning of this post? I had to know, so I shot off a text to Zach, and in response, he picked up the phone and we talked for almost 2 hours. This is what he told me had happened after the memorial service. As he was seated at Karen's memorial, weeping along with the rest of us as we celebrated the life of this amazing woman, it forced him to reflect on the life he'd been making apart from God. And he saw clearly that the direction that he was moving would never lead him to a life like this woman lived, and not to a life with a woman like her. And in the kindness of God, over the following few weeks after the memorial service, God brought an end to that relationship that he had been in for 5 years, but it sparked a fire in his heart for a rekindled relationship with God. As we spoke on the phone, I heard a joy, a levity that only comes from freedom in Christ like I'd never heard in his voice before. He shared how his love for his mother had increased 10,000 times. His words, not mine. How much he respects his dad's love for him. He understands now all the sacrifices that they made that at the time, when he was a kid, he hated. And how he's learning to govern all those passions that God has baked into him as a gift, but that for so many years had just enslaved him. This has been such an amazing reminder that we often give up. We often lose heart. I know I did. But God keeps working, and that he often uses the hardest things in life to bring about the most profound